Well, here we are at the AI Summit. With me today is Ryan Steelberg from Veritone. Thank you for joining us here.
Yeah, great to be here. It's nice to see people at a trade show again.
Yeah, I agree. So tell me, where's AI in the enterprise these days?
You know, we're making a lot of advancements. You know, we at Veritone, we've been doing this now for about 6 years. So we're one of the, I guess, the old farts in the room. Before, well, it was when we go to like the NAB shows or the CES shows, and it was maybe 5% of the companies even had some concept, or even if they didn't think about branding using AI. But today, obviously we have entire trade shows around it. So I think most Fortune 500 companies maybe not have a perfect strategy, but they are putting it forth in their AOP budgets to understand that, listen, we have to have a concerted effort to employ AI to try to improve our business one way or the other. So I think we're past that stage, budgets are applied, and now you're at different stages of companies of how much they've invested and deployed AI throughout their enterprises.
So are you finding is it the business unit level? Is it the corporate level? Is it just one area for a proof of concept? What are you seeing?
Well, I think what you just touched on is part of the reason why it's taken so long for companies to adopt it. I'm a product and software guy by trade, not on the pro serve or consulting side. So, we're usually used to historically of selling, I'd say, turnkey finished products and software products to end customers. Typically, those are very specialized to a very specific use case. So we're typically selling it to the end user or their boss. So in our industry, Veritone, we started heavily in media and entertainment. So we usually went after the chief revenue officer, or really almost the C-suite. And that was our end, where other groups have gone through a completely different angle, and they're going through the IT department, right? And some have made it through, but I guarantee you there's a lot of companies that went through initially like IT or vice versa, that were great technologies. They'd probably be names on this board here today, but it's just where they try to enter the ecosystem, maybe was the wrong initial path. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So what's the future look like then, in terms of basically companies starting? Because a lot of companies haven't started yet.
Yeah. Well, I think right now, thankfully, because of the advancements of the platforms, Veritone's included, the bar has gone really low. So meaning you can invest a little bit of money, all right, a little bit of time into an AI-based project and quickly start to discern, is this relevant, am I seeing ROI? Before, right, and you can actually get those results back, if not weeks, even days. That's a big change, where you have to make a much bigger investment, right? And you have to wait literally weeks or months to see, okay, is this really providing yield? So that's a big opportunity that people can do it. And now, thankfully, it reminds me a lot of the early web days, that when websites started exploding and it was just a mass chaos out there, that webmasters became the big thing, right? And everybody had to hire a webmaster, which I like to say is, he just kept the piping of your website organized. Forget WordPress and what came later. And I think that's where we are right now, is the budget, the cost basis to get into and start exploring AI machine learning has come down, and people now are investing on the other side, so companies have subject matter expertise of what to do with this new tool.
So are the companies that are early and ahead, are they like screaming ahead, and then the laggards are just not catching up?
Well, there's different types of players in this space. So we like to say is, Veritone's a horizontal complementer in this space. Meaning, if you look at groups, well, it's no longer called FANG. I think the new one's called like Mamba or something like that, with Facebook's name change. But a lot of, if you look at, Google is a great example. They were almost born and birthed into AI natively. Their entire platform started by obviously indexing websites, right? So that created, in effect, a bunch of structured data. And then they had, by the nature of their product, they had you and I and everybody else and billions of people coming and hitting and searching against that index, right? We'll call that the machine, the input function, right? So by default, like a lot of these groups that had the end-to-end solution, and Facebook included with social media, they were almost forced to really embrace AI early on, right? So I think groups that have a fully integrated solution at scale, like unfortunately with FANG, it's limited to a few people, Amazon included, they're light years ahead, right? And then there's groups like, I'll say one tier below it, where hopefully we'll crack into that nut eventually, groups like Veritone and Data Robot and Palantir and others, that we feel we have great technology, and we're really equipped to help everybody else, right? The groups that aren't quite at the sophisticated level of a Facebook, right, or a Google. There's where groups like Veritone can really help the enterprises, right, catch up. Let us be your AI machine learning wilderness guide. Let us help build that next world-class AI-based solution for you so they can be competitive and stay in the ecosystem aggressively.
So you've got a technological track record, anybody can Google and find that out.
Yeah.
What, if anything, is AI in the enterprise different from earlier technologies, other big technologies? Is it the same model that you're seeing?
Well, I think AI was dependent upon, and again, why a couple of those previous companies had such an early advantage, is in my mind, if we're talking about AI machine learning as it relates to analyzing, harvesting, and acting upon data, you by default need all your data organized, right? So I think the digital, again, the big boys in the internet space, again, Facebook and Amazon, by default they were already there, fully digitized, right? Their primary assets, their primary functions were fully digitized, right? That's the nature of their business model. Every other business, if I take Pepsi, right? All of us have data silos. So I believe that first, we had to go through the digital transformation phase first. Companies need to understand what are my relevant data sets, right? What are the core KPIs that make my business work? You need to understand your data, and then you need to have your data actionable, meaning let's say call it digitized and readily available, and then you can apply AI to it.
Right.
It's hard to jump if you've got a bunch of video on on tape in VHS tapes. You're not going to be able to jump to AI to do hyper-indexing of that content.
Right.
That's kind of my point. So I think groups now have obviously every Fortune 500 company is fully invested in digital transformation, and I really believe still that there's a lot of companies that still need to finish that project before they can get the full yield out of AI and machine learning.
So a year from now, what are we going to be talking about?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about that. I love it when gauntlets are thrown, and there's a few classic times I remember, but Facebook changing the name to Meta, is something I've been a big fan. I've been a gamer my whole life. My children are gamers, and this one is going to be different. You and I, remember vividly the days of CompuServe and AOL, right? These completely closed, walled garden ecosystems, right? Even before the open World Wide Web. That is not going to exist today. Right, and I believe what you're going to see is with blockchain and other new technologies out there, I think you're going to see a very open, interoperable metaverse world, meaning there's going to be tens and millions of different worlds. The key is, this time, they're going to be very interoperable, right? So my son may be able to take his own avatar, if you will, and be able to seamlessly go from like a plain Fortnite and then bounce into these different ecosystems, right? But still maintain security and integrity. I may walk from an Avengers theme to a serious Library of Congress experience, but do you understand? There's still going to be continuity there. So I do believe that the digital transformation of us and what it means to be human is going to continue to advance. Social media, I think, was the tee up, and we're going to really have to need to understand what does it mean for us to have a digital twin right next to me the whole time. What's that going to look like? And I think that's going to be something that's going to be both very exciting. It's going to be trillions of dollars of industry, but it's going to be very scary because nobody has a clear map of where it's going.
Well, I look forward to the next year. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.